You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie. Really excited to be back for another episode. Ivan, why don't you go ahead and introduce today's guest?
I'm Ivan Zach, and I'm introducing Dr. Chip Ponsford. So we met with Chip a while ago, digitally, I should say. He is an author of the Lean Vets book that this is a topic that is very interesting to me, since my dissertation, if I will write it, is focused around that. But Dr. Ponsford is known for being a chief of staff at the Benfield the Pet Hospital. He's also an author, as I mentioned, of a Lean Veterinary Practice Management book. He's a speaker at the 2019 AVMA Leadership Conference, and he's a graduate from Texas A&M. He also used to own a hospital, a general practice, for 27 years. Very, very excited to have you here. As I said, we met digitally. This is the first time I'm seeing you. You guys can't see Dr. Ponsford, but we're on Zoom. And for those folks that are unfamiliar with what Lean is about and Lean methodology, can you please share in sort of a few words, what is it and how is it applicable to veterinary medicine? And how did you get inspired to dig into the topic to the degree of writing a book about it?
Well, Lean comes from the Toyota production system. This is a system that the Toyota automakers came up with in order to become competitive on a world basis in automobiles. A lot of this stuff actually came from the United States right after World War II, and they incorporated it, kind of made it themselves. The word lean is a westernized term, and it comes from being able to get all the waste out of a process or procedure or system. So that's what Lean is basically about. It is applicable to any business, anywhere, and has been applied to businesses of all different sorts, including manufacturing, service industries. A big proponent or a big usage of Lean has been the human healthcare area, and they've seen some tremendous gains using the Lean mindset. I got involved with it about 7 or 8 years ago. I was in the hospital for a short period of time for a bad gallbladder. And so in my recovery, I decided to start reading. I'd always wanted to get an MBA. I just never wanted to pay for it. So I started reading books, and I read about 80 books that first year after my surgery. And one of the topics that I came across was Lean. And the more I learned about it, the more excited I got about it. And the more I thought, this is exactly the way I think about management. This is exactly the way I think veterinarians think about management and what they're looking for in a management system. And it's just been almost an obsession with me since then.
I have to say something. I got to jump in here. Another name for Lean is Kaizen, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
No, Kaizen is a part of Lean. Kaizen means good improvement or continuous improvement,
So it's just a piece of, okay.
It's a piece of Lean. Lean is about increasing the value to the client from the client's perspective, reducing costs, increasing quality, utilizing your resources more efficiently, engaging staff, and continuous improvement. It looks at management, and from a system standpoint, Lean has a tendency to ask, why did this happen, not who did it. It's very customer-centric. It is very staff-centric. Lean sees staff as an asset. In fact, Lean sees staff as the most important asset that a company or an organization has, because it's the only asset typically that has the ability to appreciate and value over time with training and with experience and time. All these things come together. Each of the little parts is pretty simple. It can get a little bit complicated to put all the pieces of the puzzle together, but once you get it, you don't think any other way.
That makes a ton of sense. It's really interesting to hear that. I was so excited, for the recording of this podcast, because I was going to tell my Kaizen story. So unbeknownst to me, and I'm going to tell it anyways, even though it's not exactly what we're talking about it. But unbeknownst to me, and I wasn't, I've been through business school and knew about the Toyota method, but forgot about it. And then, 20 years went by and I had 2 kids. First name was Kai, second name was Zen. So I thought I'd bring up that story. Which is kind of interesting. So, but I'm also getting an education. It's really such an honor to have, such a thought leader, somebody that's been involved in this space and somebody that works for one of the coolest organizations in vet med on our podcast. So so welcome again.
Thank you.
Thanks for that education and explanation.
So with lean, and again, I'm a huge fan of lean, and I've been studying that for the last sort of year or so. Again, my interest popped because I bumped into it in several areas, and now kind of dipping my toes into understanding how the human healthcare works. And I totally agree with you that this is sort of the path to engage the frontline staff. But can you maybe compare it to some other methodologies that maybe you walked into sort of in this research? Because to me, lean is really about the front line. I'm working with quite a few corporate organizations where we realize that the training and the change has to happen from the top at the level of the executive organization and the board of directors. But I never found anything that engages the frontline staff. And I think that lean response, it's basically the answer to that. And is that your experience? Is that why you think that that's applicable to the hospital level, or is there any other angles to it?
Well, I think, the traditional Western way of managing is what they call Taylorism. And Taylorism is everything top down. The leadership decides what's going to happen. They decide how it's going to happen. They decide when it's going to happen. And it's forced down the hierarchy to those at the bottom. Lean is much more bottom up. It's not completely bottom up. We're not talking about turning the asylum over to the prisoners. What we're talking about is partnering with staff and employees and allowing them to use their intelligence, their experience. I mean, after all, they're the ones that are dealing with on the Gemba, where the action takes place, where the production occurs on a day in and day out basis. They know the customers, they know the processes, they know things that upper management probably doesn't understand or know about at all. So to give them the respect that they deserve for that knowledge and to incorporate them into the process of continually improving and fixing problems is what gets them involved. In other words, all of a sudden, they are not the cause of all the problems. They're part of the solution. So we're not blaming them anymore. Veterinary medicine, and maybe some other places, it's been very successful in taking very creative, very energetic, very innocent, very enthusiastic staff members that just want to come and help animals and crush them to the point where they don't want anything else to do with veterinary medicine. And I think lean is the answer to that. They become our partners. They own those improvements that they put in cycle in our processes, and they become our partners instead of somebody to blame all the time for the problems.
Yeah, so as you were talking about that, I just remembered the quote from Mark Graban's book, which he took as a quote from Dr. Damien, that bad system will defeat good people every time. And I think that really speaks to what you just mentioned. It's interesting that you mentioned Gemba. So this is probably an unfamiliar term to most listeners. Can you maybe give us a couple words and couple terminologies of what is lean composed of? Like, what is sort of the day-to-day team that runs lean? What do they do? Like, what does it look like on the level of the hospital?
For me, after all these years of studying it, looking at it, and trying to decipher it and make it make sense in my own head, that's where my book came from. And I'll have to defer to you and see how well that was accomplished. But I think lean is really more understandable and more apropos to healthcare industry than it is to manufacturing or service industry or anything else, because we are scientifically minded. And lean is based on the scientific method. So, for instance, when we see a patient that comes in and it's got a problem, the first thing that we want to do is we want to establish what is its current condition. What is happening right now? Part of that is we do a physical exam. Well, the same thing happens in lean. The first thing that we've got to do is we've got to figure out what is our current condition. Where are we right now? And part of that is doing a physical exam. Now, we wouldn't diagnose an animal without doing a physical exam, yet we diagnose problems and try and fix problems all the time in our practices without doing that. So the physical exam in Lean is going to Gemba. This is a Japanese term. It means to go where the work is being done, go to the shop floor. If you listen to Japanese newscasts, they'll say, instead of I'm so-and-so in New York at the trade center, they'll say this is so-and-so at the Gemba. So he's where the action is going on, where the processes are happening. So in the practice, we would get together all the different people. If there are receptionists involved in the process, if there's techs involved, everybody comes together. All the stakeholders that have a stake in that patient and in that flow of what's going to be happening come together, and they follow 5 or 6 or 7 patients through, for instance, annual exams. And then we go back and we map that. We put it on paper, and we see a lot of times there's a lot of waste in there that we didn't realize was going on.
And that's the value streams, right? You compose the value streams?
Right,
Yep.
that's the value stream and a value stream map. But this is the physical exam part of Lean, okay? So now we know what's really happening, not what the way it's supposed to be happening, not the way we designed it to be happening, but the way it's actually happening, warts and all, waste, defects, everything. And we can work then, and now we can see where we need to be. In veterinary medicine, our goal is to create health. That's our ideal condition, is for a healthy animal, quality of life. It wasn't up to us to define what that was. That's been defined for us by other forces. But in our practice, we get to decide what is ideal. You know, if you think about what would your practice be like if it were ideal? If it were perfect, what would that look like? What would that look like as far as staff? What would that look like as far as patients? What would that look like as far as clients? What would that look like as far as community involvement and giving back to the profession? So you set this ideal condition, what it would be like if it was perfect, understanding that we're never going to get to be perfect, but that's where we shoot for. Vince Lombardi said that we pursue perfection, hoping that in the journey we find excellence. And so that's the purpose. So now we've got our ideal condition, our true north is what it's called. We know where we are, we know where we want to be. What are the differences? What's the problems? This dog's got coughing, it shouldn't be coughing. It's got diarrhea, it shouldn't be having diarrhea. This practice has got issues with this, or it's got issues with that, it shouldn't have issues with that. This is not happening according to our ideal state. So what are those gaps? What are those problems? What's our problems list? Our master problems list. The next step, just like it is in veterinary medicine or medicine, is to decide what is the root cause? What is the diagnosis? Can we get a common diagnosis that explains everything? We don't want to fix things on a superficial level because it's not going to last. The only way you're going to get lasting effect from fixing your problems is to fix it at the root cause. So we go through a thing in Lean called 5 why. Well, what's the problem? Well, why is that happening? Okay, so why is that happening? Okay, why is that happening? Why is that happening? Why is that happening? Until we get down to what we consider to be the root cause. At that point, we can start devising countermeasures or treatments to hopefully fix the problem. Now, we don't know if that's going to work, just like we don't know if a particular antibiotic is going to work to treat an infection in an animal. But we try it. It's a place to start. And then we come back and we analyze how that worked. If it worked well, great. We go on in Lean, then that becomes now our new standard way of doing work. If it doesn't work, we reevaluate. And we go back to the process and we come up with other countermeasures and try another experiment until we find something that works. And it's this iteration over and over and over that is Kaizen. Kaizen is this continuous improvement day in and day out, so that you're not trying to meet a certain benchmark set by some organization that says that you should be seeing this number of patients on this number of days and that sort of thing. It doesn't matter what somebody else is doing. What matters is what's happening in your practice. And what matters is that you are better tomorrow than you were yesterday, and that you are better next week than you were this week, and that you are better next month than you are this month, that you are continuously improving. What the other practices are doing doesn't make any difference. You're not in competition with them. You're in competition with what you were yesterday. And because you are the expert in your practice, that's why lean is I think is so neat, so cool. It teaches you how to have the lean mindset because you're already the expert in your practice. Your practice is unique. No other practice has you as the leader, has your staff as the staff, has your clients as the clients, has your location as the location. All those things are unique. And we can set benchmarks and we can try and tell practitioners that they should be doing this and they should be doing that and they should be doing it this way and they should be doing it that way. But that's not the case. Every practice is unique. And lean is about teaching you how to promote that uniqueness and how to make that uniqueness even more unique and even better than it was yesterday. So it goes along, it's very scientific, the scientific method, hypothesis, do an experiment, study your results, analyze your results, and make some sort of conclusions about whether it worked or it didn't work. If it didn't, fine. Now we know something that didn't work. We won't do that again. And the faster that you can go through those iterations, the faster that you can find out what works and what doesn't work, then the faster you're going to move forward and the faster you're going to improve. Anybody that's in any of your competition is going to have to figure out those same questions. You're going into somewhat of an unknown. And the only way to work through an unknown is this trial and error and trial and error and trial and error, and learning by doing and learning as an organization what works and what doesn't work and to get where you want to be.
It sounds like a perfect time for a plug for your book, I think, Dr. Chip. I'm sure there's people that are going to be listening to this thinking to themselves, how can I get started? I'm not a veterinary practitioner, but I'm a software guy. And I mean, the method, it just seems so steadfast and so true. So right in the middle of the podcast, how do people get your book? Where's the easiest way for them to get it?
The easiest way right now is through Kindle. Costs all of $4.50. to get a Kindle copy. I'm working on the print version to get it formatted and stuff, so it'll come out on Amazon as a print.
Sounds like you're not doing it for money.
No, I'm not. This is my little way, I hope, of giving back to my profession so that all the new vets and stuff like that are scared of opening up their practice or whatever. I'm very private practitioner oriented. I don't want to see the small animal veterinary clinic go the way of the dodo bird and become extinct as we know it. And unfortunately, there's lots of aspects of small animal practice that we've lost over the last several years. And I think to some extent we have only ourselves to blame. But the book is designed, it starts out with a chapter on physiology. It goes to a chapter on physical exam, going to the GIMBA. It goes through pathology, the different kinds of wastes that we want to be aware of as we look at our practices and our systems and our value streams, the treatments. We go into, we talk about Kaizen and what that means. The other thing that was really interesting to me in learning about lean was this idea of strategy deployment, or the Japanese word for it. And I try and stay away from Japanese as much because I think it puts a barrier between people. But anyway, it's called Hoshinkanri. And what it means is compass management. It goes back to this true north. What is your true north? And how do we deploy those ideals and those concepts throughout the whole practice so that we're all on the same page? We're all on the same end of the rope, pulling at the same time in the same direction with all of our force. We're not working against ourselves. And it goes into another aspect that I learned mostly through Mark Graben and some other stuff is doing process behavior charts, which is another subject in and of itself.
Super interesting. I'm going to see if I can shine as a student of yours after reading the book. What I liked about this, and I think that something that you didn't mention, but it was kind of assumed, that all the changes that are implemented at the level of the team, and when the decisions are made to do this scientific thinking of experimenting on hypotheses, they're done by the staff. And that is what is amazing, I think, about it, is that it's not management says, go try this. It's actually uncovering together where the bottlenecks are in the process and where you can eliminate waste, make things better. And then the staff comes up with the experiments, and the scientific nature of it, of experimenting, failing, and then not being blamed for failing. It gives people the creativity creativity and ownership of the processes in the hospitals. And I think that that's what's phenomenal about it, is that people can own the decisions, they can own wins, and they can own failures without being blamed. And I think that is
That's right.
what's so interesting about it.
What a concept.
Yeah, exactly. So simple. So simple. And then I just want to give an example. I was at this lean thinking conference in a human field, and they were talking about very simple. It's not major decisions about the revenue shift on the price increase. It was as simple in the human hospitals. They had this sign. So they had a problem that everybody who was waiting in the emergency area, they wanted the patients not to urinate before they go to see the doctor, because then if they need a urine sample, then you can't collect it. So in this hospital, I think it was in Boston, they had this emergency waiting area where they decided to put a sign on the door next to the bathroom saying, "Do not void before seeing a doctor." And it had no effect. And then because they did lean there, then they had this Spanish speaking nurse, but she said, "Can you guys put on that door, do not pee?" They said, "Do not void before seeing a doctor," but not everybody knows what "do not void" means. So they simply changed the sign. She was so excited about it. She owned that not peeing sign, and they put it on the wall, and it worked. It
I know.
worked and it was magic. And then she was aligned with management just by owning a little change.
And not necessarily a big change, but what a difference it makes in the day-to-day operation for something like that to happen. I'll give you an example of two of the Kaizens. And again, these are not earth-shattering, monumental changes that we're making. These are day-to-day little things that make our clients happy, provide better service to them, or just make our work life easier for us to accomplish on a day-to-day basis. So it's not so tiring and frustrating. We had a drawer in our pharmacy. In our pharmacy, there wasn't a lot of, it was more of a corridor than it was a room. So there wasn't a lot of room to get out of the way when you opened up the drawers. And when one of the drawers, we kept our syringes. The TB syringes, which we used, the 1cc syringes, which we used quite frequently, were stuck way back at the back of the drawer. The insulin syringes, which we used hardly ever, were up at the front. So in order to get a TB syringe, we had to open the drawer completely to the back of it in order to get that syringe, and then that just impeded flow back and forth in the pharmacy. So what I did was I took the problem and ran with it on my own, and I moved the TB syringes to the front of the drawer, put the insulin syringes at the back of the drawer since we don't use them all that often, and that fixed the problem. Now, again, that didn't make us millions of dollars. It didn't save us anything. The clients were unaware of that. It wasn't for them. It was for the staff and just to make life a little bit easier in getting syringes out of the drawer. Another example of Kaizen, we were having problems with the controlled drug book, which is pretty common in veterinary practices. The staff was having difficulty putting the right phenobarbital dosage on the right controlled drug log sheet. In other words, the 60 milligrams were sometimes being logged on the 30 or the 15 milligram, vice versa. Well, I noticed that the label for each of the phenobarbital concentrations was a different color. So we took out the white sheets in the controlled drug log and substituted them for colors that matched the label color of the controlled drug. This is a visual management concept of lean. So now, if they got the phenobarbital that had the blue label, it was just a little bit easier for them to recognize the fact that they were writing on a blue sheet of paper versus a green sheet of paper versus a pink sheet of paper. Now, we didn't fix all the controlled drug log errors, but we fixed those for that particular drug. Again, we hadn't reached perfection, but we were a little bit better than we were yesterday.
That's great. The one thing that you touched on that I'm really passionate about is that it's not only the front line, and some people will be listening to this and say, "Oh, those are just little changes," which that's what builds up the continuous improvement. But also, you mentioned about the true north. So, in a couple organizations that I work, well, in SmartFlow, that the software that I created, and then further in IDEX, we implemented also a framework in the management system that's called Traction. It's a part of the Entrepreneurial Operating System by Gino Wickman. And then Basically, what was interesting, I was comparing the two, and I'm very much driven by implementing in organizations the vision, the mission, the core values, and then everybody aligning on them. When your organization reaches certain size, and I felt it in several organizations over 35, then you can keep the glue of the organization holding together. And that particular true north that you mentioned, that is something that they recommend, but it's more of a management and executive level framework. What I liked about Lean is that it does have the true north, the vision, the principles that everybody aligns on, but then also it touches the frontline staff and it connects them all together. And that's really what composes the entire system. That's why I think that it's so exciting. Which leads me to a question. Now, the consolidation on the veterinary market is very prominent right now. We're about 20% into consolidating all the practices into these organizations. Do you think that there is a place for Lean in the consolidators, or is it more of a sort of a one individual practice methodology? And if it does, how do you think it may apply?
I know of a couple of organizations that are looking at backing off on the micromanagement of individual units within their company and allowing the staff and the managing DVM and stuff to basically manage their office. Working for one of the other national companies, it's all about brand. Everybody has to be the same, so that if you walk into here, it's the same as you walk in over there. Well, and that's because they've all got the same name. But some of these corporations are not doing that anymore. Some of these corporations are buying them up and offering the individual practices background help, behind the scenes help. You know, they'll take care of the payroll, they'll take care of inventory or getting things ordered and shipped and getting best prices and stuff like that. They'll work with social media and PR and stuff. But the practices keep their same name. So there's not this tendency to want to make everybody the same as everybody else, when, as I have felt all along, is impossible to do. Again, we're looking at unique situations, and all these different shaped practices, and we're all trying to put them into a square hole. I don't think it works very well. I don't think it's sustainable that way.
Early in the podcast, I think the second episode, we had a CEO of a new consolidation, Dan Espinal. He's a CEO of Rare Breed. Their mission was pretty much that. They're helping with the payroll and the marketing and those things, but they're leaving it in the hands of the veterinary practices to make their own improvements and aligning them around sort of their own goals. So that's interesting that you're saying that there's more and more of those, because they were early stage, and I think they are early stage, but it would be interesting to see if Lean is something that might work for them.
It's also really interesting, I think, back to episode 6 when we interviewed Dr. Frank Marshall, and it sounds like he's implemented Lean maybe without even knowing that he has. And I wanted to ask you if you've seen that as well. Like, do you go in, or have you kind of advised or heard of people that you're like, well, you're doing this now, you just don't know the name?
Not per se. One of the things that I think that Lean does, like I said, I don't think that a lot of this stuff is all that different than what we're doing or in veterinary medicine as it is, because we are based on scientific thinking. I think one of the things that Lean has done is be able to package it in kind of a complete methodology that allows you to learn it fairly easily. The way I look at Lean is like giving you a set of Legos. I'm not telling you what to build. I'm just giving you the infrastructure to build whatever you want. However big you want, however small you want, whatever color you want, that sort of thing. Lean gives the infrastructure to that. It gives the mindset, it gives the philosophy of doing that, the true north. The true north is decided by leadership. But after that, once it gets deployed down through the levels, what metrics and what is decided is important to watch is left to the staff. In other words, I want good customer quality. What does that look like at your level as a receptionist? What does good quality to the client look like for a vet tech? What does it look like for a kennel worker? They all have different things. It looks differently from each of the departments. And we're not telling them what they have to measure. What we want is them to tell us what they think they need to measure in order to make sure that the upper metrics are being followed and are good metrics. In the book, I talk about the difference between management by results and management by objectives. And what they talk about is as a balanced scorecard. Yes, we want to measure results, but the other thing that we want to measure is how we're getting there. Wells Fargo got into a bunch of problems by only measuring results, only wanting new accounts. And they weren't watching how their banks and individual units were accomplishing in that. So the balance is in metrics is, yes, we want results, but yes, we want good systems. Yes, we want safety. Yes, we want, efficiency, all these other things. So it all balances out. We're not just looking at numbers.
Exactly. That's why I love the term balanced scorecard and in the management of any organization, because for the most part, and it's not new, and measuring your business not only by revenue. And when you look at most consolidators, they measure revenue, profit, how many appointments, anything that's leading to how to make money. And I think that the challenge in veterinary medicine, on top of all the challenges that we do have with the burnout and all other things, is to impose another number of how much of what you need to do. We're trying to, we don't go into this profession for the numbers, and then by these acquisitions, they're imposing more of a production-based metrics. And I think that the balanced scorecard that looks at the employee satisfaction, at the customer satisfaction, at the growth opportunities, that is something that I think we should be measuring rather than just how much money we made for the corporation. So I think that, with the consolidated world that is coming in, for someone to look at this as a methodology to run their business, it would be extremely valuable.
Oh, I think so. And I've thought so for a long time. Now the problem is convincing everybody else that this is a legitimate, at least worth a look, an experimentation with, to see if it works. I have no doubt that it can work in veterinary medicine. It's worked everywhere else.
Thanks so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. We're pretty social people, so you'll find us on every social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at theveterinaryin.podcast.com. Thanks so much for listening.